I've got a 2019 Mazda 3, really like it. I couldn't find a lot of information on the remote start option available for that car, so I thought I'd make a video showing what that looks like now that I've got it installed. Part number for this is BCKA V7 620, that's the control unit, and BCKA V7 630, which is the harness. Very catchy names, I know. So note that if you do go get this installed, the dealer is going to claim that you need both of the keys. So if you have a spare, bring that in as well, because apparently they need to reprogram them. That might save you a trip if you know that in advance. So the first thing you're going to see is the remote, and it is a chunky little guy. As is the remote for the Mazda 3. I mean, this is probably one of my least favorite things about that car. It is a very large remote. It's unwieldy and kind of cheap and plasticky feeling. You know, if you want to use the key inside, there's this flimsy little plastic door that comes with it. It's not really that good of a design. I don't know why Mazda made their key that way, but also similarly redesigned the key for the remote start. Now, so it's quite large, and if you compare the units side by side, you'll notice that although it has a matching aesthetic, sort of, it's slightly longer and slightly more narrow and about as fat. But instead of the buttons being on the side, the buttons are on the, I guess, back of the remote. Yeah, that's another thing. I don't really want to have to carry this thing around all year round when it's, not necessary, so I've put it on this nice little lobster clasp so that I can take it off and not have to jam all this crap in my pocket. So anyways, there's the unit, and yeah, it's not too impressive. Also, you'll notice that this kind of metal, I use quotes here, is actually not metal. I dropped it like within seconds, and lo and behold, it's just kind of some white plastic that's been painted. So yeah, not the most premium feeling thing that you're getting for your 730 Canadian dollars that it costs to get this installed. So let's start out talking about the features of this. Put that to the side. If you've ever seen the older style for the, let's say, 2018 and prior Mazda 3 and other Mazdas, they had a nice little LCD display on there that would show you the status of the car, status of the engine, status of the rear defrost, how much time it's going to run for, and it could show you error codes if something's not working. In this case, all you have is a little red and green LED, and you have to try to decipher everything from these inscrutable flashes of the LED and whatever tones the unit makes. So note that just pushing the start and stop buttons by themselves does nothing, which I guess is going to prevent this from going off in your pocket or something like that, or accidentally starting the car when you're fiddling with things, since you can't really see just by looking at the remote if the car is running. So you're going to have to push this F button, and you get about 3 seconds to perform a function after you push that. So the most obvious feature you're going to use is starting the car. So to do that, push function and start. And the car should be started if it makes that little happy sounding song after the green light blinks. If for some reason the car doesn't start, you'll see this LED blink red. If the temperature is below 5 degrees Celsius, which is about 41 degrees Fahrenheit, the rear defrost will automatically turn on to make sure there's no frost on your windshield, and in my case, the mirrors also heat up. So that's a nice feature. However, if you want to force the rear defrost on, push the function button twice, and then start it. So I didn't do it fast enough there. and that should start the car with the rear defrost on. Now those beeps there are for another feature that I'll discuss, which is that you can actually get some kind of a vague idea of the runtime just by attempting to start the car. The car is currently running, so if you tried to start it again, it'll kind of sound like it's starting, but then it'll beep like after that. So in this case, it beeped 4 times, and what those extra beeps represent is how much time the car is going to run for. So if you want to know that, you can try to start the car again, and if it beeps once, it's going to run 0 to 5 more minutes. Twice means 5 to 10 more minutes. 3 times means 10 to 20 minutes, and 4 times means 20 to 30 minutes. So that's very vague, but at least it gives you some vague indication of whether the car is starting and how long it's going to run for. Although it's, you know, it would sure be nice to have a little 7-segment display or something like on the old remote that would just show the run time. Obviously, to stop the car, you hit the function button and stop. This is a 2-way unit, so it is nice. It tells you if it worked or not, so you can have some confidence your car is running. And as I just demonstrated, you can also get a pretty good idea of how long that car is going to run for. If you push the function button 3 times, you can use the car find feature, which will honk the horn and blink the lights both twice. Handy feature if you're in a parking lot. I'll note that this thing has 2,000 feet of range, which is, I believe, about 610 meters. So that should be enough for most purposes if you're in a store or somewhere nearby, and or you live in a building where you can't park super close. It definitely works okay for me being on the 4th floor of a condo building and having the car in a parkade. Another thing you can do with this remote is change the runtime. It defaults to 10 minutes, and you can also set it to 30. You've only got the 2 options. It'd be nice if you could do something in between, but it is what it is. You get one of the 2. So it's pretty easy to change it though. So you just have to hold both of these buttons down until it beeps, and that just sets it to 10 minutes if you hit start. And now it's set to 30. I guess it beeps twice if you set it to 30, once if you set it to 10. So pretty easy to change the runtime if you want to change that setting. Again, I wish you could get more options, but 30 minutes is enough here. So the manual for this thing says that the battery should last about a year, which means that every year you go to use this, you may have to fiddle with replacing the batteries. So this is the battery door, and you'll see in the front, might be difficult to see, but there's a little hole there that you can kind of get a tiny screwdriver into. And let me tell you, changing the batteries in this thing is not a very easy task. They tell you to wrap some tape around here, but obviously I'm not too worried about scratching this unit up at this point. This is literally the first day I've owned it, and it's already scratched to hell. So it's also very easy to crack that, as you can see. So what you might have to try doing is to get a little plastic spudger like this one that you'd use for working on a cell phone or something like that, or some small electronics. And let's see if we can, oh my goodness. Get the spudger in there. Oh, and okay, now that you got it pried open, you have to work the spudger around the unit a little bit. Try not to bust any of the clips or crack the cover, which will be very easy. Let's go on the other side. Yeah, they sure couldn't have made it much more difficult than this. There we go. Now that should come off nicely, and there's your, you've got a little cover that should help it waterproof a bit. You pry that off, and there are your two CR2032 batteries in there. So keep a couple of those around before next winter strikes in case your batteries need replacement. So when you're putting it back together, you're gonna try to shove this little cover back inside so it stays waterproof. I think it's secure. Got that cover back on, and we'll snap this battery cover on here. Hope I didn't destroy the thing. Yeah, it sure could have been easier than this to get the cover off. There we go. Now it's back together. So that's how you replace batteries in the Mazda Remote Start for the 2019 Mazda 3. Not too easy. So what's good about this system? Well, the BCKA V7 620 is the only option you can install on that car at the moment, as far as I can tell. Mazda's not really recommending you install anything else, like say a CompuStar unit, although probably a non-Mazda shop is willing to install something, but they're probably going to require one of your fobs, and then you're going to lose that guy. And these things probably, I don't know exactly what the cost is, but I suspect it's around $300 to replace one. So that's a drawback if you go with a third-party unit, at least right now, until they develop some kind of bypass for the keys. So the buttons are pretty easy to use. They have a nice click to them, and you know, it's a pretty simple unit to operate. And unfortunately, there's not a lot else that I can say about this that is really positive. It gets the job done, the range is sufficient, and you know, overall I'm still glad that I got it. On the other side, for the more negative things I have to say, well, the unit's like the remote is kind of cheap and chintzy feeling. It's freaking huge. I mean, this key and this remote together are going to take up pretty much all the space in my pocket. You know, Mazda should have been able to design a more svelte, elegant design than this. And then on top of that, they had one that was thinner at least, and maybe not thinner, but at least more narrow. And it also came with an LCD display that would show you the status of the car's engine, whether it's running or not, and the defrost. And that's gone. They've just gone with this kind of lame LED here that just shows you either something good happened or something bad happened, and you have to try to interpret numbers of beeps, and really disappointing. On a car that's improved as much as the Mazda 3 has in 2019 over its predecessors and over its competition, this feels like a dramatic regression into something so simple. It's almost like something straight out of the 90s with a price that's adjusted for inflation. It's a bit disappointing. So I do wish Mazda made a much more sophisticated and nice key, or at least one that was smaller than this. I believe the Astro Start unit has a key that's about as big as this key fob here or something. So that's a bit disappointing. But in conclusion, I'm happy that I got this. It's nice to be able to remote start my car. And although the interface on this thing is a bit disappointing, if you can justify paying about 730 Canadian dollars for it, then probably worthwhile to get. One drawback a lot of people do complain about is that when you use this guy to start your car, now first off, you've got to have the doors closed, you can't have a key in the car. There are a lot of limits on when this thing will not work, and then you'll get a red light saying that it didn't start. But as long as all that stuff's said, it'll start. But as soon as you go to open the door of the car, it's going to stop. And a lot of people find that really annoying, because then you just have to go and start your car again, which is, with a push button start, not a huge deal, but some people find that quite annoying if they're going to their car, they want to load up the groceries while the car warms up. Well, it's going to stop as soon as you open the trunk or open a door. You can probably trust the factory setup from Mazda. And if you don't mind the issue with it stopping as soon as you open the door, and don't mind the giant size of the fob, pretty decent system all in all. So thanks for watching, and I hope this has been informative for you in helping you decide whether you might want to buy this for your Mazda 3. Thanks.